So the very next day, once again, I wake up, go to Starbucks, have breakfast, had exactly the same breakfast I had the previous day. And then I started heading towards the show floor. I actually got there really early because I had talked with Jason. Jason said, we're going to be on the show floor at 8. And I'm like, okay. So I was at the show floor at 8 as well. I'm going to shadow this guy throughout the entire goddamn press conference. So I'm at the show floor. I'm on the show floor at 8. And I'm just like calling Jason. Jason's like, oh, yeah, but what kind of a badge you got? You got a blue badge, right? Because blue badge is an industry badge. So you don't have access to like media only areas. And he's like, oh, yeah, that's a pain because you don't have access to this area we're in right now. And I'm like, fuck, God damn it. So I'm just waiting around because I knew where he was. And I just waited around there for a while. And after a while, he comes out and he's like, well, here's what we're going to do. Here's a media badge. He just hands me out a media badge. And I'm like, oh, sweet. Here's a media badge. Let's go inside. So I go inside the media room, whatever, was just like a whole bunch of people there with computers and whatnot, just typing away and reporting news and Twitters and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm in the media room just kind of, getting acclimated. I set up my laptop as well. I just work a little bit more on my Dark Souls 2 questions. And then he's like, okay, so we're going to go and we're going to shoot some B-roll, which for those of you who aren't familiar with that, it's just like shoot footage that you can then like put in between normal footage. Like, let's say you have, I don't know, you're doing a piece about a specific game. B-roll could be like gameplay footage or something. And then whatever. I think you guys get the idea. It's like filler video. So they're shooting B-roll, and I'm like, yeah, sure, I'm just going to follow you around. So I follow them around. We go through the show floor, and then the floor is about to open up at noon. And at noon, there's just like this sea of people at E3. Just like so many people there. It was insane. And everybody's just getting ready to just jump in. Just jump into E3 and just go straight up to... go straight up to the show floor and watch whatever the hell they wanted to watch. Like they're just, people are screaming, waving their arms. Just like, E3, E3. And that made me realize something, which is, I wish people could understand that while, sure, that's all fun and good, but E3, I don't feel is really an event for fans. E3 is supposed to be a media event. Like, I was there to do coverage for my YouTube channel. That was the reason I was at E3. I wasn't there to play games, okay? Playing games, like maybe if I had to play like a specific game or whatever, if I had a chance, but I did not stand in a single queue for anything because it's like, that just made me realize, like, there's a lot of people here that are not media. You want to know how I know that? Because people who are media do not stand on a 5-hour line. Because they don't have time for that. They have other things to cover. Media doesn't work like that. So I don't understand. It's like, it seems that a lot of fans can get entry into E3. And it's like, look, I understand, but it's like E3 is supposed to be for media. It's a media event. Like there's PAX if you want to do fan events and all that stuff. There's PAX, there's Gamescom, there's all these other events. And then there's media events. And it's just like, I was a little bit frustrated by it. Like, it was cool. Like, the atmosphere was amazing and all that jazz. But it's like there was a lot of stuff that I didn't see, which I could have seen and I could have reported on if there weren't so many fans at the event. And it's like, look, I understand you're a fan. You got your badge somehow. Like, maybe you work at GameStop and you're a clerk, or you work at someplace else and whatever, and you were able to get an industry pass. And, I mean, I'm saying this, and I had an industry pass. But you guys need to understand, my industry pass was there so that I could go and provide coverage for E3. That was my main goal. I was not there as a fan at all. It's like, sure, did I get to do things that I'm a fan of? Yes, but there needs to be a separation. It's like when you're there to work, you're there to work. You're not there to be a fan. You're there to work, do your job. That's what I was there to do. People need to learn to separate the two things. It's like, you're always going to be a fan of something. You know, and if you work in the gaming industry, there's always going to be stuff that you're more excited for. I fully understand that. I fully comprehend that. But still, you're there to do media coverage, and that should be a thing. And unfortunately, it seems that more and more people are getting access to E3, and it's like, I remember when I wasn't involved in the industry, I was like, man, I wish E3 was open to the public so that I could go there. And it's like, now that I'm in the industry, I understand why E3 cannot be open to the public. It just can't, because, I mean, the lines will be too big and people will not be able to cover all the things they need to cover. It's just a fact of life. But anyways, we watched the opening event of E3, and I'm beginning to sweat a little bit because I have like a light pointed directly at my face. So if you guys start watching like droplets of sweat come down my forehead, that is why. And maybe that was a little bit too much information, but whatever. So we watched the starting of the E3 event, and like people just flooding through the gates and whatever, and just like going on to the show floor. And as people were like struggling and maiming themselves and trampling themselves all over the place to get into the show floor, me and Jason were actually going the opposite direction to the meeting rooms, to the Namco Bandai booth to watch a Dark Souls 2 presentation. I was just like so excited. I was just like getting in there with my camera, and they're like, you can't really shoot presentations. And I'm like, why the fuck not, you son of a bitch? Why do you not want me to show this to the world? What the hell is wrong with you? But anyways, we weren't able to really film anything during the presentation. And there was supposed to be a one-on-one interview in that particular day, and there wasn't one. And that was the thing. So, first of all, the guy that was playing during the presentation they made, because they actually had like a playable version of Dark Souls there. At some point, I was almost like, look, dude, can I just try? Because you're kind of sucking balls here. Like, the guy was playing really bad. Like, I'm sorry. I can't even remember his name right now. And it's like, I'm sorry, dude. You were playing really bad. And I mean like really bad. But whatever. So the guy, at some point, I even asked him like, so Dark Souls 2 doesn't have a lock-on system anymore? Because the guy wasn't even locking on the monsters. You know what I'm saying? Like, he would not lock on the monsters. He would not like run around, do backstabs. He would not a single thing. He would just like try to bash his way like this was a fucking hack and slash. And I thought that was hilarious. Just like looking at the guy playing, I was like, what the fuck is wrong? And the other guy that was like doing a presentation, there was two people in the Dark Souls presentation. The other guy was like, you should have practiced, just like teasing the other guy. And I was just like, this is hilarious. That was the first presentation I saw at E3. So I see the presentation, and then we get out, and Jason's telling me apparently they fucked things up. We don't have an interview and whatever. And then they're asking me, oh, can you want to play the game? And I'm like, do I? Do I want to play Dark Souls 2? Why yes, I kind of do. So I go and I just start playing Dark Souls 2, and in the meantime, Jason is just trying to figure out things with their guys, and he's like, look, I want an interview. Basically, that's what he's telling them. Look, I don't give a fuck. I don't care. I want an interview. We're going to get an interview. We're with the Game Station. You've ever heard of the Game Station? We really want to cover this game. You guys sure you don't want us to cover this game? Boom. Next day, we had an interview scheduled with Yui Tanimura. So just so that you guys get an idea of how Jason functioned, that's pretty much the gist of it. It's like, you couldn't fuck around. It's like the guy would just get there and he's like, look, I want an interview. I'm going to get this interview. I don't care if you like it or not. That's just the way these things are. And I was just like, that's amazing. So anyways, pretty much I played Dark Souls 2, and they like left. They went to do something else. And I'm like, dude, I'm playing Dark Souls 2. It's like, I'm not going to leave. Even though looking back, I really should have left. That was like my first mistake at E3 because I didn't leave. I stayed playing Dark Souls, and I got split up from the team. And that was like one of the biggest mistakes I've done because what I ended up missing on was the Bethesda booth tour. So I did not get to watch the Bethesda interviews. I did not get to watch or play Elder Scrolls Online, which was just a big mistake on my part to it was a mistake on one hand, and it was a really cool thing on the other because I got to play a lot of not a lot, I got to play a little bit of Dark Souls, but enough to get some first impressions for myself, and I also took a couple of notes of how I felt things were working with the combat, and I'm thinking I'm going to be able to really kind of bring a description to you guys about Dark Souls and about the stuff that I played, which is not this particular video, but you guys can look forward to that because that is definitely coming at you pretty soon. So anyways, I played some Dark Souls and then I got split up from the team. As a matter of fact, I played Dark Souls pretty much until some guy from Namco came up to me and he said, "Look, dude, just you need to like get the fuck out of here." He was just, I'm serious. Like he didn't say it like that, but he's like, "Look, you get one more death and then you got to go." Because it's like, I'm sorry. I look back at me and there's just like this huge line of people waiting to play. And I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize there was anyone else behind me. I was too focused playing my favorite game of all fucking times." So here I was, doing the mistake that I said you should never do earlier, which is I was being a fan. And you can't do that. You just can't do that. So that was my first mistake at E3. But anyways, I think you guys are going to get a decent discussion out of me in regards to that particular Dark Souls 2 play session that I had. So anyways, moving forward, the next thing that happened was basically I went on the show floor and I was kind of lost. And basically I met the Hapaj team because I was just like kind of overwhelmed. I entered the show floor and it's just like everything is overwhelming. There's an overwhelming number of people. There's an overwhelming number of games, an overwhelming number of booths. It's like this big conglomerate of overwhelming stuff for someone who's never done an event like that. And I'm just like looking around, like walking real slow, just like trying not to bump into people because just like rivers of people going left, right, front, running to queues and whatnot. And I'm just like, wow. So one of the first things I noticed was that like I look at the queue to go watch the Destiny presentation. You guys have no idea. Like this queue was like, I don't know. It must have been like a 6-hour queue. Easy. So, which means there were people who stayed there all day long just to watch Destiny. Can you believe that? That doesn't make any sense. Why would you go to E3 and stay one full day in one place? Like there's only one amazing game at the show. There's so much more stuff to see. You can't do that. Which is why I realized that there were a lot of people there that just weren't media. It's impossible. You can't be media if you're going to wait for 6 hours for a fucking presentation. I'm sorry. You're not media. At that point, you're just a fan. You're just there and you're a really big fan of the game. And I understand that. But it's like E3 might have not just been your show. Okay. So I met the Hapaj team, who are the guys who also make capture cards, which was cool. I saw their latest capture card, which I'm actually interested in. I met the Warframe team. They were also there. They were presenting Warframe on the PlayStation floor, so they were actually in Sony's zone of the conference. And then I went to see Invisimals for Portugal Gaming. And the reason why I went to see Invisimals, you gotta remember, what the fuck are you talking about? Watch Invisimals, dude? Like all the other stuff that you got to watch at E3 and you went to watch Invisimals? Here's the thing. So, Portugal Gaming, I mean, the guy from Portugal Gaming has scheduled all these things with Sony. And it's like, here's the thing. I don't care even if someone screws me over, right? I still have my own reputation to look after. It's like when I say I'm doing something, I am doing something. And Sandra had these things that he had scheduled with her, and to basically save face, I said, I'll go to these things, I'll write about it, and I'll pass it on to the Portugal Gaming guys, so that basically I was trying to safeguard Sandra's best interests. Because, I mean, let's face it, I mean, Sandra really went out of her way to help me out. She really did, because she really didn't have much reasons to do it. Because let's face it, I mean, at that point, I think she realized that I was just so frustrated that I mean, there weren't even any assurances that I was even going to do anything for Portugal Gaming at that point. But I'm like, I'm a man of my word. I'm a professional. It's like I'm there to do a job. And so if there was an appointment to schedule and cover Invisimals, I was going to give it fair coverage. So I went with the Invisimals thing. You couldn't film. Basically, you couldn't film any presentation at E3. That's the way those things go. They don't want you filming that presentation, because if that was the whole point, they would just do fucking Nintendo Directs. They want you to like take your own, your own conclusions from the presentation they gave to you, and they want you to write about it. Write about it, make videos about it, whatever. That's what they want. So I went to see Invisimals, and it's interesting because I actually found it interesting as I was watching it. Like, I like the premise. I don't know. The whole thing felt very Pokemonish, and I'm not a fan of Pokemon at all. But it felt like a more, like a cooler version of Pokemon. So it's like whatever. The one thing is, though, I'm not a huge fan of augmented reality. And that's a lot of the stuff that they do on the Vita. And this Invisimals title was both for the Vita and for the PlayStation 3. And the Vita version had a lot of augmented reality stuff. Now, I was fascinated by the way it worked. Like, you would point the Vita to a table, and the monster would actually, the Vita would be able to somehow calculate that there was a table there, and the monster would like walk around in the table without actually going over the table, without actually, so it would actually seem like he was at the table, and then you could like move the Vita around and you could see different angles of the monster. And I thought that was cool. I thought that there was a lot of technology there. I thought there was a lot of interesting gameplay mechanics on that, but I'm not really going to talk that much about Invisimals. But yeah, I watched Invisimals, and then I met up with Sandra. She debriefed me, and the fact of the matter is, during the first day, like I said, I fucked up because it was the first time I was doing E3. And I got completely overwhelmed. At first, I got overwhelmed by Dark Souls. Then I got overwhelmed by the show floor. And in the middle of that, I actually missed one of the Sony presentations, which was Tearaway, which is bad because I was actually interested in that game. And by interested, I mean it had an interesting and original concept. I mean, it's from the same guys who created Little Big Planet, Media Molecule. So I wanted to see Tearaway, but it's like I ended up going to the Dark Souls thing and just not leaving, which was, again, like I said, I should have left when I went to the Dark Souls thing. And that costed me a lot in the first day. But yeah, so after that, Sandra also gave me access to this special room, which was only for people from Europe. And it had a whole bunch of Sony stuff in there. And I was like, this would be perfect if I had a fucking cameraman with me, because I would be able to actually interview people here. I would be able to interview people from Destiny. I would be able to interview people from, what's the other titles that I wanted? I would probably be able to interview people for Infamous. I would be able to interview people for Killzone. I would be able to interview people for a lot of titles that were there, because those people were only there exclusively in that room. But it's like, the thing is, I don't feel comfortable by myself without having someone to work the camera to make sure that the footage is coming through right. And I realize, yeah, sure, you can set up a tripod, but that's not the way to do things properly, people. You don't just set up a tripod. You have to set up a tripod. You have to have someone constantly looking at the thing, what do you even call it, the viewfinder? You have to have someone constantly looking at the viewfinder, making sure the angles are right, making sure that all of a sudden, like, someone doesn't move. Like, because, for instance, suppose you're interviewing someone, right? You're doing an interview. All of a sudden, the person does like this. Like, they move their chair, they scooch a little bit, and they're like this. All of a sudden, they're out of the fucking frame. And guess what? You're like, oh, can we stop the interview for a while? I need to go over there and adjust the viewfinder. How professional is that? That's retarded. You don't want to do that. You need someone behind the camera. That's the whole reason why there's jobs for people that are cameramans. I mean, seriously, come on. In order to do an interview, you need someone behind the camera. Even if the camera is sitting on a tripod, you need someone behind the camera. That's just the way these things are. And let me just tell you something else. If you're thinking about going to E3 and setting up a tripod in the middle of the floor and conduct an interview, good fucking luck, buddy, because there's so many people there, they'll ram your tripod to the ground and probably trample your goddamn camera. So, I mean, this is just me getting pissed off because, like, I would have been able to get so many good interviews if I had someone with me that was from Europe, because I would be able to get them access to that room. Now, the problem is obviously the people that were with me from Maker were actually from America. So I wasn't able to negotiate access for them into that room. And we weren't able to actually score a slew of interviews that we most likely would have gotten. Like, I mean, Watch Dogs was there. We could have interviewed people from Watch Dogs. We could have interviewed people for all these amazing titles that are coming out for the next generation. And I didn't, because I was alone and there was nobody else there from Europe. Yeah, I got really frustrated about that. And not to mention that then just to kind of have the icing on top of the cake, Sandra tells me, oh, I can actually get you a one-on-one interview with this person. And I'm like she was going to get me like for Beyond Two Souls, I think. And I'm just like, I'm sorry. I don't feel comfortable enough doing an interview without having someone operating the camera, because for the reasons I just told you, I don't want to like end up, in a situation where someone just does like this. And I'm just like, oh, I'm sorry, I need to go and readjust the viewfinder. And then they like move like this. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I need to adjust the angle again. That's not the way these things work. You need two people, at least two people, to conduct an interview. As a matter of fact, the teams that I was running with for Maker, they had 3 people in them, which was the producer, who would be the person asking the questions, a sound guy, someone just running around with friggin' sound gear strapped onto their chest, just like friggin' doing sound stuff to make sure that the sound would be the best it could possibly be. Obviously a camera guy. And I just got so frustrated because I knew I could have gotten so much more stuff. Anyways, after getting access to that room, I never really returned to it because, like I said, I didn't have any time, and I didn't have anyone that I could take with me to perform interviews or whatever. Like, I could go there and play games, I guess, but it's like I told you, I'm there to do coverage. I'm not there to play games. But anyways, I then was able to hook up with Jason again, and we head out to the show floor to hunt for interviews for the next day of E3. It's just like, we were just like trying to hunt down people that we could interview for the next day. And then pretty much the show just ended. We were just like looking for more interviews as the show ended. And the show ended. I went to the hotel. I took a quick shower, and then I went to the Maker party. There was actually a Maker party that night. And the Maker party, I have some mixed feelings about that party. For one, I have some mixed feelings about what I did. And for two, I have some mixed feelings about how much fucking noise there was, because I'm not even kidding. I could not hear myself scream when I was screaming to other people to try and get their attention, which is just like, it's not the best way to do a conversation when you're just screaming in someone's face, So while I was at the Maker party, I actually saw quite a lot of TGS YouTube personalities like Jesse Cox, a lot of people from the Yogscast. I think the entirety of Yogscast was over there during the duration of E3. I saw Angry Joe, I saw Dodger, I saw all these people, but I didn't really went and introduced myself because, the thing was, it was so noisy, I could barely hear myself scream. So then there's also the fact that sometimes, even though I speak perfectly normal English, if I have to scream it out, it's actually really really stressing for my throat. And like, I needed to save my voice. I needed my voice because I was doing the Dark Souls 2 interview the next day. And also, you guys need to realize that in the past 72 hours, I had gotten a combined total of 9 hours of sleep. So it's like, I was not at my MIA game. So I ended up not really introducing me to a whole bunch of people. And let me just tell you guys something, which is really funny. I had heard a whole bunch of times that Dodger was really small. And let me tell you, when people say that Dodger is small, that's actually not right. Dodger is like tiny. And I don't mean that in a mean way, you know? It's just, that's the thing. She is really, really friggin' tiny. Like, I was like, whoa. So that's Dodger. Wow. She was just like, I don't know. She was like below my chest in height, like easy. And I'm kind of tall though. I mean, I'm not sure how much of a fair comparison that really is, but she is really tiny. But like Jason said, she's hella cute though. So I mean, that's just the way those things are. It's just... Anyways, I ended up not introducing myself because I just didn't feel comfortable, and then there was the noise thing, and I was tired, and you know, I just didn't want to give off that vibe like, oh man, you guys are amazing, and I'm this huge fan. And it's like, you know, it's just, I don't know. Looking back to it now, maybe I should have just introduced myself because, I mean, I think actually people might have even thought that I was a douchebag, like an arrogant douchebag, because I wasn't introducing myself. When in reality, I think it's more of a culture clash kind of thing, because in Portugal, like, I was raised to always wait for someone to introduce me to someone else before I engage in a conversation. And I guess you could almost argue that, like, yeah, but you did the podcast with them. And I'm like, I'm not sure that classifies as an introduction, you know? It's like, yeah, sure, we did some work together. I don't know. I just didn't feel comfortable about the whole situation. So I ended up not really introducing myself to a whole lot of people that were there. Which, looking back to it now, I really should have, because I think I might have given off the vibe that I was an arrogant douchebag. Which is clearly not the case. It's just, like I said, I was grown to like wait for people to introduce me. So I don't know. I don't know. I looking back to it, like I said, I should have just introduced myself and whatever. Someone that I did talk to is basically, I teased Jesse about Dark Souls because I teased him a lot about Dark Souls during the podcast. So I'm like, so Jesse, when are you going to do a Dark Souls playthrough? And he's like, maybe never. And we practically didn't speak again. Oh man, that party was just really awkward for me because I just did not feel comfortable around all these people for some reason. But what I did do was I talked to Angry Joe. I just had to talk to Angry Joe because I mean, I watch a lot of Angry Joe's stuff, and Angry Joe just seems like he's the most accessible person in like everyone. For whatever reason, I can't even explain why. It's just, he gives off that vibe that he's just like the most accessible person in the world. So I just went up to Angry Joe and I told him, so, have you played Dark Souls 2 yet? He's like, no. You know, like with this, no. And I'm like, well, I did. It's pretty amazing. And we talked about Dark Souls 2 for a while. And then I told him, and I might be interviewing Tanimura-san tomorrow. And he's like, what? I should be doing that. And I'm like, dude, come on. I'm smaller than you. Come on. Give me a little bit of publicity here. What the fuck? And I think he hated me after that. I think he was like, fuck you. Like, the fuck you coming on in here and friggin' interviewing Tanimura-san? What the fuck? I just thought it was really funny. But like, he was cool. He was cool. And I also met a lot more people from Maker. But like I said, I mean, Angry Joe was like the only YouTube personality that I really introduced myself to. I remember that at some point, Aaron introduced me to the two girls that were there. And it's like, I can't remember exactly what happened. But the thing was, I couldn't really understand anything that they were saying. They were trying to say stuff to me, and I couldn't understand it because it's so noisy in there. And I'm just like, yeah, I know, right? And then they started looking at me weird, and I was like, fuck. What the hell did I just agree to? You know, they were just like looking at me weird, and I think that the whole situation was just really awkward. And I think that they thought that I was just like a random creeper or something, because again, it's just because I couldn't understand them because there was so much noise in there. And And I think they thought I was a creeper because after a while, Aaron like took off, went to talk to someone else, and they just like took off as well. And I was like, well, that's the end of that. And then after a while, another girl approached me, and this was very interesting. Like she just approached me, and she looked like she was about to pass out. Like she was seriously drunk. And she just comes at me, and she's like, "Whoa, you're a really cool guy, but I'm probably not going to remember you in the morning." And then she walks away, and I was like, okay. Like, I have no idea. I'm like, what the fuck just happened? But whatever. Oh yeah, after a while, she came back, and she was about to offer me a drink or something, because apparently there was a waiter going around with a whole bunch of drinks, and she's like, "Hey, I don't know you, but," and I noticed that she's like going to try to offer me a drink, and I'm like, "Oh, I really don't." Before I even say anything, she's like, "Oh, never mind." It was just like really funny. But anyways, I hung out at the party a while longer, met up with a lot of other people from Maker. Eventually, I even met this guy, Vinny, who was a really cool guy. We talked for a while, and I told him my story about Portugal, because this was actually like outside of the party, because like the party was inside this club, and we actually went outside because of just the crazy amount of noise that was in there. Like my eardrums were about to start bleeding by the time I got out. Because I actually have really good hearing, and I mean like really good hearing. Like I can hear you coming into my house, like even if you don't open the door. Like say you don't open the door, you just somehow magically find a way into my house, I can hear you. That's how good my hearing is. So it's like with all that noise action happening in there, it was just like, yeah. We go outside, and I met this Vinny guy from Maker. It was pretty cool. And then after a while, I just left with Jason back at the hotel, and once again went to the hotel and obsessed about my Dark Souls 2 questions. This was like the third night in a row that I was obsessing about. The second night in a row that I was obsessing about Dark Souls 2 questions. Sorry, it's just that sitting in the same position for over like 2 hours now, it's like my ass is beginning to feel a little bit squared. But anyways, let me just have a look here at my little cheat sheet, and